Hi, Year One. Today I'm going to read you the rest of the story, Sidney the Spider. Yesterday I only read the beginning of the story to you, so we're going to read the whole book today, and it's going to help you with your activity. Once upon a time, there was a large spotted spider called Sidney, who lived in the top corner of Mrs. Brown's shed. He was a very special spider because he spun beautiful golden webs. But Sidney was lonely. When he arrived last year, all the other spiders shouted, "Go away, Sidney! We don't want you here. You will steal all our prey with your golden webs." So Sidney hid away in his dark corner, feeling miserable. One bright, sunny morning, Mrs. Brown decided to spring clean her shed. So she opened up the door and banged her broom, feather duster, and dustpan down on the floor. Sidney and all the other spiders in the shed shivered with fear. I wonder why they shivered with fear. Soon Mrs. Brown started to sing "Incy Wincy Spider" at the top of her voice, and Sidney shivered a bit more. What do you think Sidney might be thinking right now? How might he be feeling? Then Mrs. Brown picked up her broom and started to sweep. Swish, swosh, swish, swosh, swish, swosh. Sidney looked down from his deep, dark corner and saw Mrs. Brown's broom coming closer and closer. Swish, swosh, swish, swosh, swish, swosh. "Help!" cried Sidney. "Please help me." Luckily, Susie, a tiny house spider, heard him. "I'm in the flower pot, behind the spade," squeaked Susie. "Throw out your line and come and hide with me." So Sidney threw out a fine golden thread and landed gently in Susie's flower pot. "Oh, thank you, Susie," said Sidney, smiling. A few minutes later, Sidney and Susie heard swish, swash, swish, swash, swish, swash. Oh no! Mrs. Brown's broom was heading for the flower pot. "Help!" cried Sidney and Susie. "Please help us." Luckily, Stanley, an ancient spider, heard him. "I'm in the red welly boot, under the bench," mumbled Stanley. "Throw out your line and come and hide with me." So Sidney threw out a fine golden thread and grabbed Susie. Together they landed with a gentle thump in the old red welly boot. "Thank you, Stanley," said Sidney and Susie, smiling. A few minutes later, Sidney, Susie, and Stanley heard swish, swash, swish, swash, swish, swash. Oh no! Mrs. Brown's broom was heading for the red welly boot. Mrs. Brown bent over to pick up the boot, but luckily her phone rang at that very moment. "I will come immediately," they heard her say. So Mrs. Brown picked up her broom, feather duster, and dustpan and rushed out the door. "Hooray!" said Sidney, Susie, and Stanley. "Come on, everyone, let's have a party," they said. So all the other spiders crawled out of the holes. First, they all shook one of Sidney's legs to welcome him. Next, they danced a special spider dance in the middle of the shed. After that, Sidney knew that he would never be lonely again. Oh, I like the ending of that story. It started off in the beginning. I felt quite sad for poor Sidney because he was lonely and miserable. But now at the end, he's got lots of friends and he's having a lovely party.